everybody coming in. Welcome to our What Does Mental Health Mean to You webinar. I'm Erin O'Sullivan. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Strategic Partnerships with NIRSA. NIRSA is the Professional Association for Campus Recreation. So excited to be a part of this today with Born This Way Foundation, Give Back Foundation, and of course our friends at Rowan University. A few quick logistical things. So we will record this webinar and that will get posted to the NIRSA website and also to the Rowan website. You'll see a link to where it will be on the Rowan website at the end of this webinar. You can use the chat button you'll find towards the bottom of your screen. Make sure if you want to talk to everybody that you select all attendees. If you have all attendees selected when you chat, you can feel free to drop in resources, share ideas and stories, and that will also be recorded and saved alongside this webinar. The other button that you can use is the Q&A button. This will send questions to our panelists and they can respond to you that way as well. And if we have time towards the end of our panel, then they'll be able to answer more of your questions that way too. So two different ways to engage. Only the chat though does get saved in the recording. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. McPherson-Myers to help introduce our panel.
Good afternoon. My name is Penny McPherson-Myers, coming to you live from Southern New Jersey. Rowan University is excited to host the What Does Mental Health Mean to You virtual panel with the goal of engaging the viewers in discussions on mental health stories of resilience, available resources, building brave spaces and kinder communities, and navigating well-being during COVID-19. Rowan has been supported in this event by the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the Active Minds Chapter, and the Rowan Thrive Committee. We know nationwide that emotional well-being and mental health are all being challenged now with the pandemic, regardless of your age, race, ethnicity, religious or political affiliation, or gender identity. And we hope today's event will provide hope and opportunities to heighten well-being. We are grateful to work with 6 featured panelists, Born This Way Foundation, Give Something Back Foundation, and NIRSA, Leaders of Collegiate Recreation. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Pam.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pam Watts. I have the pleasure of serving as Executive Director of NIRSA, the Association for Campus Recreation. We are a membership-based organization that represents over 4,500 professionals and students working on nearly 900 campuses in North America. NIRSA has had a decade-long active commitment to health and well-being, and more recently, we've promoted an integrated approach for health and well-being in higher education. We all own well-being, so it's very on point for us to join organizations such as these on this panel to collaborate, to learn from one another, and to share emerging and impactful practices. I want to give Kevin George and Rowan University a special shout out for pulling this group together to offer this learning and networking opportunity for all of us. We're excited to join the discussion today about mental health, particularly as we're all navigating the impacts of this global pandemic. And now I'll pass it to Daryl from the Give Something Back Foundation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daryl Edmonds. I am the Regional Director of Mentoring and Partnerships with Give Something Back. We are a scholarship organization that offers scholarships to Pell Grant eligible students that have experienced hardship. Most have either been in foster care or been impacted by the incarceration of a parent. Today, we are super excited to work with one of our 29 partner colleges across the country in Rowan University, and with Born This Way, one of our favorite programming partners that we work with across the country. This is our 4th program that we've done with Born This Way, and it has been an opportunity for us to work with our scholars and engage them in different ways and different types of settings and different types of experiences to help them grow through high school and to enter into college. Give Something Back has over 700 scholars across the country. We have offered over 1,500 scholarships to students, and currently we have over 200 of those scholars in college right now. And understanding what our students are facing right now in college and in high school, this time can be taxing on everyone's mental health. So we are super excited to be a part of this conversation with Rowan University and Born This Way. Speaking of Born This Way, I'm going to turn it over now to Shadille, who will be our moderator for our panel.
Daryl, and thank you Rowan University, NIRSA, and Give Back Foundation for hosting this virtual conversation. My name is Shadille, and I have the honor of serving as the Communications and Outreach Manager for Lady Gaga's Born This Way Foundation. a nonprofit organization founded in 2012 by Lady Gaga and her mother, Cynthia Germanata, to build a kinder and braver world. We work with young people, nonprofits, and researchers to demonstrate the power of kindness to impact well-being, validate the emotions of young people, and eliminate the stigma that surrounds mental health. Now, more than ever, we need to focus on how we can support our mental health during this global crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic and the physical distancing measures that many countries have implemented have caused disruptions to all of our daily routines in one way or another. Across the world, people are facing circumstances they've never encountered before. But fortunately, we can still find support, connection, and kindness. If we lead with kindness, it can go a long way in ending the stigma that surrounds mental health and will positively impact our communities to make them more open to addressing these issues well beyond this crisis. To help share their thoughts on the situation and shed some light on what we can all do to support ourselves and each other, I am so fortunate to be joined by amazing panelists, and I'd love to invite for three of them to help kick off the conversation. Allison, Chase, Elijah, and Lisa, would you please introduce yourselves and share why you think it's important to consider mental health at this moment?
Hello, everyone. My name is Allison Nemec. I'm a current graduate student in the Higher Education Administration track program at Rowan University. I'm also part of an office called Healthy Campus Initiatives, in which this past year I planned a student mental health conference with an emphasis on mental health for student leaders. And one of the reasons why I think it's important to consider mental health at this time is people are facing a variety of different changes in their lives. People might have lost certain jobs, might be getting used to online schooling, and might just be in a whole new environment altogether. And with the new environment comes the lack of having some of the same mental health resources that they might have been used to, such as in-person interaction.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Earth Day. My name is Chase Campbell. I am a student at Rowan University. I'm a junior. I am an advertising major with minors in communication studies and strategic communication. I am the president of Rowan Ad Club, vice president and co-founder of the Men of Color Alliance, and I'm also a resident assistant. I'm here because I was invited by Rowan Thrive, the Rowan Thrive Committee, so big shout out to them. And I'm also here as a representative because mental health is definitely not emphasized a lot in students of color's families, especially being like an African-American male. I can definitely resonate with how some like mental health things aren't really talked about as much. But I do think that mental health is a crucial component, especially this time, because without saying, the brain is the most crucial part of the body. Like it dictates how we act, how we feel, essentially making us human. So everybody's going through these abrupt changes, and especially being a college student, some students found school as a safe haven. Some kids feel like they can be them true selves at school with their peers. So being forced to be in quarantine, I know I struggled a lot because I'm a social person. I thrive off of social activity. So it was kind of hard for me to really be inside and get to know my inner self, because I feel like a lot of us do struggle with that. Humans are social creatures. So it's definitely important to practice positive mental health, practices during this time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elijah Kelsey. I am a junior advertising major at Rowan University. I aspire to be a marketing manager for a retail corporation. I am a Give Back Scholar for the Give Something Back Foundation. I am also an active member of Friday Tie Day and also Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It's very crucial to focus on your mental health during this time because you're not really sure what's going to happen. It's a time of uncertainty. So you're basically confined to your home and you're wondering what's going to happen next, what's going to happen in a couple of days, months, you don't know. So it's very important to try to occupy your time, the spare time that you had to occupy it, and try to shape it and do something else instead of just sitting there wondering and pondering what's going to happen next.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa Harrison. I'm a political science and journalism major. I'm a returning undergrad student at Rowan, which is a huge part of why I'm so passionate about mental health and mental health awareness. I think had I been more educated on mental health and the right resources, then I might have graduated in 2016 as planned, but I didn't, which I'm not ashamed of. I think it's so important, especially now, to have an open conversation and have just everyone be educated on the importance of mental health, especially now when we all have a lot of time to just sit and we're sitting with our feelings and we're sitting with our emotions. And I think it's important that it's okay. We know that it's okay to feel those emotions, and it's okay to reach out for help if we feel that we need it.
Thank you all so much for those thoughtful introductions and insights. Oftentimes, we're quick to trivialize the very real pressures that we each other face, and oftentimes students are grappling with. But many of us face serious challenges that are innately stressful. For example, a third of 13 to 24-year-olds that Born This Way Foundation surveyed in one of our previous studies felt stress from concerns over physical or mental health themselves or for someone in their families. And in addition to that, a quarter of young people say that they felt stressed about being able to afford food or a home to live in. And so these are very real scenarios that many students are grappling with, in addition now to this global pandemic. And I'm excited to invite Dr. Aiva and Dr. Sadler to please also introduce yourselves and share a little bit about what you think is contributing to this distress that our students are feeling today.
Thank you, Shadille. My name is Kara Aiva. I am an associate professor in the Counseling and Ed Settings program at Rowan University. And I train counselors to work in both a P-12 setting and in a higher ed setting. I also run pre-college programs for both middle school and high school students and supervise an array of students. I'm also an advocate for mental health and really well-being promotion in schools. And I'm also a partner and a parent to two young small children. And I am grateful to be here today, but I also want to begin by recognizing that we are in a pandemic, and that whether you've had some previous stressor or a mental health diagnosis, that there is no universal way to experience what's going on. Just like not everyone has the same personalities and or coping skills. And the kindest thing we can do for ourselves and really for others is to acknowledge that it's okay to not be okay and to really ask for assistance. But most importantly, it's also okay to be vulnerable. Oftentimes we see this as a sign of weakness, but it's more a state of being, and that being is really being open to receive some sort of assistance. And to really answer your question, Shadille, I would generalize that young people could potentially be operating on what we call survival mode, and that they're really trying to fight those feelings of not being vulnerable. And what we might be experiencing is really an overwhelming feeling of grief and loss. And there could be multiple layers to this. It could be losing friends and family, specifically to COVID or related deaths. It could be separating from your family, as they might also serve as essential care workers. But it could also be the loss of freedom and control that we kind of once knew from our everyday, daily living routine structures, as our panelists have mentioned. And even greater is the loss of certainty. And from what everyone knows, we are in what people call uncertain times. That also includes uncertainty of whether or not we're going to eat or have access to financial stability. But it also means, I think Chase alluded to this, a loss of a safe space and a structure, and really could be supportive people in person. And that is really something that colleges and universities have been instrumental in providing for our young populations. But I also want to highlight for our most vulnerable populations, those stressors are even way more amplified than what the general public is feeling right now. And I want to specifically name those. Those are our homeless students, our undocumented students, our students who identify on the LGBTQ+, who identify in the neurodiverse community, and those who have been medically diagnosed both with physical and invisible conditions. And as we've seen throughout this country, the marginalization, particularly for people of color. And this is why ending that stigma and talking about mental health really becomes critical. We need to work together to build kinder communities to offer hope as our young people and communities need us to open that dialogue and really the door to be able to provide the assistance and the support to begin the process of healing together.
Good afternoon. First, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Born This Way Foundation, Give Back, NIRSA, and Rowan University's campus partners for this invitation. Truly, it's an honor and a privilege to sit before you on today and to be a part of this panel. My name is Dr. Kai Sattler, and I am one of the mental health clinicians in the Wellness Center, specifically counseling and psychological services at Rowan University, located in Glassboro, New Jersey. I am also the founder of You Good Fam, so I do hope that you all are good out there. You Good Fam stands for fostering and advancing mental health and emotional well-being among specifically students of color. This service was brought to Rowan University in the fall of 2018 in an effort to support and address, and more importantly, increase access to mental health services to our racially and ethnically diverse population of students. So again, thank you for this opportunity. So Shadille, to answer your question, I really appreciate and think it's really important for us to acknowledge that there is stress as well as anxiety that we're currently in, whether we are students or not. But I would like to answer this question specifically through a cultural lens. And Dr. Aiva has already alluded to it in terms of this particular pandemic is exacerbating a lot of the social stressors that many of our marginalized and vulnerable groups were already dealing with prior to this pandemic. So when we begin to think about our students who are experiencing food insecurity, when we think about housing insecurity or housing instability, my mind actually goes to individuals who are living in cramped living conditions, so very tight spaces where practicing social distancing would become very difficult to do, and also there being a greater risk of infection. And if one was in a position where they had to quarantine, that could be very difficult based on the current situation that they are finding themselves in. I think also it's important for us to keep in mind that certain communities, the types of jobs that they actually have, and they are considered essential, it may be very difficult for them to be able to stay at home because of the necessity of needing to ensure that there is a source of income for the family. I think it's also important for us to keep in mind that there are populations who have limited access or no access to technology. And I recognize that even at our institution, many students are, all students quite frankly, are working virtually. So it being really important to take into consideration access and the limitation that technology, or at least some of them may not have as it pertains to technology. I think it's also important for us to keep in mind that some of our students whose parents are undocumented immigrants, so therefore there also brings this strong sense of fear when we think about if one is symptomatic, and at that particular point, there's a strong possibility. So whether it was during this pandemic or even prior to, seeking out medical or mental health services are less likely because of this fear of being deported or being detained. So I think with all of this is really important for us to keep in mind of the health disparities as well as the social inequalities that have been part of the fabric of certain marginalized and vulnerable groups that really is a byproduct of historical as well as contemporary race and discrimination. So I definitely think that these are psychosocial stressors or social determinants that we want to make sure that we keep in mind as it pertains to our marginalized and vulnerable groups.
Thank you, Dr. Sadler and Dr. Ava, for surfacing these comments and that insight on how we can connect with marginalized communities and help to bridge that gap and at least provide the resources necessary, since we can't be in colleges and universities around the country in person, learning about the ways that we can support each other and those communities virtually during this time. And I'm interested in hearing from some of the students, Elijah, Allison, and Lisa, during this period of uncertainty, what are the ways that we can help our mental health and cope with what's going on in the world? As Born This Way Foundation's co-founder, Lady Gaga, says, we must allow ourselves to take little bites of bravery every day. And I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this.
So some of the ways that I'm supporting my mental health is like picking up new hobbies. So whether it's a virtual dance parties through Zoom, joining a new group chat, or making new dances on TikTok, I enjoy doing that. And also I'm learning how to cook new dishes because I have a lot of time on my hands. Also working out, and then picking up my new hobby, going back to my old hobby, which was collecting and searching sneakers. I am a big sneaker fan, and I like everything about them, the colors, the shapes, the sizes, everything you think of. I love sneakers.
So similar to Elijah, I've also been participating in some of my hobbies. So I like to sew and work on some of my cosplays. I'm also a big gamer, so I like arranging times to play some of the video games with friends online. And I'm also trying to contact family and like friends in order to talk to them on the phone or through video calls, just to kind of see how they're doing and just have that connection with them.
Yeah, just like Allison and Elijah said, I'm doing Zoom parties. I'm getting back to old hobbies like drawing. And then I've also been challenging myself with doing a lot of cooking and baking and just coming up with a whole bunch of new recipes. And the most important thing, honestly, is I'm just trying to be kind to myself and just keep in mind that there's no right or wrong way to live through a pandemic. There's no need to beat myself up. Like, I'm not doing enough this day. I'm not productive enough that day. I mean, we're all just taking it step by step. So I think just remembering that my best is good enough has been really helpful.
Thank you. I love that. Small steps, small bites of bravery every day that we can take to get closer and closer to wellness is incredibly important. And learning to be kind to ourselves takes practice. I'm learning the same as well in my home and as I practice social distancing, but it's not always easy to control our thoughts when we do get anxious and nervous. And Chase, I'm interested in knowing what your thoughts are around what does remain in our power. What can we control in this time of uncertainty?
So I first want to point out that great point that Lisa made about how there is no right or wrong way to go through this pandemic because it is new to us all. So to be quite honest with you guys, I don't even have the answers as to what remains in our power because even I'm having a hard time with it. But it really isn't about what happened. It's more about how we respond to it. So we can either look into the abyss, into this place of like uncertainty and the unknown and see the other side of it, or we can pack our bag and walk away, you know? So this pandemic doesn't define us. So I would definitely recommend, you know, doing things that make you happy. You know, we're adaptive, it's human nature. So things that remain in my power, I know I've been creating a routine. I wake up, I shower, you know, I throw on this bow tie, this nice outfit, you know, I feel productive. I feel like I'm doing something with my day, you know, because when you sit and you sulk and like you kind of sit in like this negative space, that's how you get in your own head, you know? So for other things you could do, you know, do it yourself tutorials, plenty on YouTube, I promise you. Virtual game nights, etc. Reach out to a friend that you haven't talked to in a while. It's the world's literally in our hands and we can make it work.
I'm in agreement there. Thank you so much, Chase. Dr. Aiva, we have so many folks submitting questions ahead of the panel. We have over 203 joining us right now. And to those of you who are on, I invite you to chat with us and share your questions and your thoughts and reactions to what we're talking about. You are part of this conversation and we want to hear your voice. And one of the questions that came through, or one of the questions that came through quite a few times in different ways, was about how we can support our loved ones during this time. What if we're sheltered in place with a loved one who may have a pre-existing mental health concern? Dr. Aiva, can you help us sort of navigate that field?
Yeah, again, I'm just gonna blatantly state that I'm gonna answer this as both a professional who is evolving in this process with everyone else, and also as a person who is sheltering in place with 3 people who have pre-existing mental health conditions. And so this is kind of the intersection of both. And what I would tell you, and we would tell you this pre-pandemic, is that your own self-care is really critical in order to be able to help others. You know, we use the expression about when flying an airplane, you should put on the oxygen mask first before you give it to somebody else. And today that statement couldn't be any more true. And so I also know that it's an uncomfortable space and kind of walking on eggshells and not sure what could be happening for the loved ones or the people around you. But I would also say to also do a little bit of research on what symptoms can look like. And just to give you a hint, sometimes people can have changes in moods. They could be vocalizing in some way or behavior a consistent worry that just isn't going away. There might be new or increased use of substance abuse. People could, and this, you might be feeling this too, you can be tired all the time, not sleeping, loss of appetite. And so kind of knowing the access, which has been drastically changed since we've been social distancing, and knowing what's in your area is really a place to start. But I think the most important thing you can do for your loved ones is really just create a safe space. And what that really means for me is creating a very intentional social connection with the people who are in your home that is actually free from technology, and that there is no sort of judgment going on. And realistically, someone may not respond to that, and that's okay, but really you're planting seeds and opening up a dialogue and really providing access in the event that people want to ask for help. And there are things that you can do from a positive perspective to promote well-being. And we've heard so many from our panelists already, one of them being movement. I can tell you right now that I walk anywhere from 5 to 10 miles a day because I need to be away from technology and I need to actually be in my thoughts. And so, but we also go on family scavenger hunts. There are a lot of mindfulness apps and meditation out there that can really help you, and it is scientifically proven to really calm your brain, as we alluded earlier, is one of the most important parts, right, of your body. So many new hobbies here that have already been talked about, and it can be to any one of your interests. And you can invite those people who you're home with to do some of those things to promote those little small gestures. And I think Shadille said, as being brave each day, you're also kind of pulling along those people with you, and really assist, I think, in meaningful connections. And it's also okay to know that sometimes you may not be the meaningful connection that the person you're living with needs. And so being able to at least set up that option, you know, even if it's putting family all together in a Zoom, or creating a trivia night together, or a virtual game night. And on a personal note, I would have never known this previously, that this would have been a really good coping skill, even for me, but it really is for my daughter. And since I'm sheltered in place with her, we actually we listen to the Calm Station on Pandora, and we color unicorn and rainbows. And I really, we talk about her feelings. She gets to ask questions about her anxiety. But what ended up being an intervention on some level for her really ended up being probably my most used coping skill since I've been here. And so all of this is trial and error. And you know, you might try something and it may not work for you. You may try something for the person that you're shelter in place, and that's okay. Most importantly is really just being able to have empathy for one another.
Empathy. That's, I think, key. And if you're a parent or guardian or caretaker with a young person in their life, as many students who are watching may have, we're worried about what we should do if our youth need help. Now, how do we know when we should intervene, Dr. Sadler?
Yes, so some of the points had already been alluded to earlier, but I think is really important in terms of parents and guardians making sure that they do their very best to model positive behaviors. So how are parents dealing with anger? How are they dealing with fear? How are they themselves working through difficult feelings? So it being really important, again, for parents or guardians to have within their own toolbox healthy coping strategies, because there is this observational learning that has taken place that even if your child is not necessarily directly and overtly coming out asking questions, they are still making that observation and learning through the behavior in which the parent is depicting at that particular time. So I definitely would say modeling is really important. Again, we also was, hearing this construct as it pertains to vulnerability. And many of us, for myself included, when we hear the word, vulnerable, there's a lot of fear that's associated with that vulnerability. So whether that's the vulnerability and the fear of shame, fear of criticism, fear of being emotionally exposed. And I think that we oftentimes don't necessarily look at the upside of vulnerability and how the vulnerability can bring a strong sense of cohesion amongst our interactions with other people, but specifically in the dynamic between the dyad, between child and their parent or guardian, I think is really important for parents and guardians to be open and honest, where they're in a position to acknowledge and label the emotions that they are experiencing. I'm of the mindset that if you name it, you can tame it. So again, putting words to the actual experience is very important. Dr. Aiva, made mention as well in terms of being able to validate and normalize what's going on in terms of your child's thoughts as well as their feelings, and being able to reframe negative thoughts. So understanding that right now what we're all experiencing during this crisis is very unsettling, and recognizing that this will pass. So whether that's even providing daily mantras, positive affirmations, just to be able to bring balance to the affective state that the child is in is very important. But I think in order to do all of this, it's paramount for parents and guardians to listen to their child and suspend judgment. I think, again, just from a historical perspective, sometimes it's very easy for parents just to simply explain what they've gone through, which is true, while at the same token that can be very dismissive and invalidating based on whatever it is that the child is bringing to your attention. So it being very important for parents to be very intentional to listen to their child and suspend judgment. The last thing that actually comes to mind when we think about caregiving, it's a time of sacrificing. And I think in that sometimes as caregivers, it's not necessarily taken into consideration the importance of being a care receiver. So it being necessary to check in with yourself as a parent, as a guardian, in terms of what you need. I'm of the mindset that self-care is self-responsibility. So as you're taking care of yourself, you put yourself in a better position and posture to be able to have that emotional attunement where you're able to empathize and feel with your child, so they'll be able to move through this crisis in an adaptive and healthy manner.
Thank you, Dr. Sadler. We had a question come in during, well, as you were speaking, from Kathleen, who asked, how can we as parents have having our own young adults back in our home because of school sending them, like how can those parents manage? I think your response really helped provide insight into that, and help Kathleen sort of answer that question. I'm also interested in hearing what our students have to say. So from the perspective of a student, Allison and Lisa, if you don't mind sharing, what are some ways that our loved ones, so in this case, our parents or our caregivers, can help open that dialogue with us? What are some ways, do you have some tips for them on how to approach those conversations?
I think that one of the ways that families can kind of help open the discussion is just through a more direct measure. So rather than using a phrase like, how's everything, you can present the situation like, hey, I've noticed this situation, or that you're sleeping a lot more than normal. Is there any way I can help? And kind of open that door from there rather than have the question be, how's everything, which can be easily dismissed.
Yep, I agree with Allison. And then on top of that, just making sure that when you're asking everyone how they are, just you're letting them know that you're there judgment-free, you're a safe space, you're in a safe space. You're just there to understand and to listen and to try your best to help them. Just making sure that there's no, gaslighting or dismissing. You're just there to be open and honest, and they can be comfortable being open and honest with you. I think that's really important, just to make sure there's no judgment. They can really speak their mind.
What are some other things that we can do to proactively create these kinder and safer spaces for students or for our loved ones, Dr. Ava?
Hi. I would say that, one of the ways in which we connect with one another is really important right now. And so anything that we as universities can provide the space to be connected. And just like our diverse students, there are a diverse set of interests. So it could be something based on a hobby or a physical challenge or things of that nature. But it could also be connecting people around a social connected action. There are people who have space who feel like they want to do something and be able to kind of give back, and also being able to create that space is also instrumental for those who have the capacity to do so. But I'm also going to empower all of you as students who, as universities, are doing the best they can to create these spaces. You guys are also experts in this. And so I think that if there is something that's missing that you would like to see, but you haven't heard it from your university or from your school yet, to really reach out and let them know, because the more they know, the more that they're able to provide to you. And there are people all over this country in student affairs departments who want to be able to help you.
And I can see in our comment section that someone asked that the young people on the panel are sharing that we should try, that schools, can try new things and ways to connect with students, and that some of them are offering COVID connections to students and staff, including Quarantine Cuisine, Pets and Sunsets, Stretch Sesh, Creative Crew, and so on. And so for the students, Elijah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we can do to create these spaces so that young people want to be a part of them.
So ways to create kinder spaces would be like joining group chats, or like having Zoom parties like I suggested earlier. Also playing games, TikToks, engaging with your family, build that bond that you left, that a lot of people lost going to school. They don't really have the time to like see them every day or like actually talk to them because they're busy with schoolwork or other activities on campus. I will also just suggest to log in on to Instagram and checking out my fraternity page, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, to see what we're doing, because we also offer a lot of things that you can do, such as we have a live podcast that we talk about different topics such as Corona or like, what are you doing to keep yourself busy? Things like that. Also, you can also talk to the friends that you don't really get to see outside of college because you're not able to see them on a daily basis. And just find new ways to have fun.
Thank you so much, Elijah. I'm with you on the podcasts. I know that at Born This Way Foundation, we have a channel called Channel Kindness, where we essentially invite young people to share stories of kindness happening in their communities. And I recently filmed the podcast for the channel, and I find it like such a great outlet. And I think if we in thinking through the question that was submitted to our Q&A and the topic at hand, if we're trying to bridge that gap between the resources that exist and those who so desperately need them, we need to find ways to reach them in creative spaces, be it through podcasts or, as Elijah mentioned, on TikTok or other social media platforms. And so it's important to sort of meet the young people, the students, and those who are affected where they are, whatever platform that may be. And we're going to move on to the next question, but I would really love for us to think of those resources. And in the meantime, I'd love to ask Chase. So many young people are finding their sources of comfort in digital spaces. We're talking about this digital connection that we all have, and most of us have been propelled into this Zoom world. But not all of us navigate it naturally, and some of us do. How important is it? How important is the digital space during this time in particular?
So it goes without saying that the world as we know it is becoming more digital through technology. I know I'm still getting used to going to school online. So now more than ever do we need to incorporate empathy in our daily lives. And particularly I'm saying this, to professors and teachers and, people who are instructing students. This pandemic has humbled everybody. We're seeing each other more at an eye level. It's kind of like we're at ground zero right now, right? So professors and teachers need to empathize with students because not everybody's able to enjoy the privileges that we may have, internet access. Some people raise siblings, some people have to work full time to provide for their family, XYZ 1, 2, 3. Just adapting to the situation in this digital space. For example, I have this one professor, fantastic guy. He did a great job adapting to the situation. His main goal is to make sure we're not overly stressed because he knows at the end of the day, our health is more important. This pandemic is bigger than a GPA. This pandemic can be traumatizing to some. So I will always, on a personal testament, I'll always remember, people for their character and how they treated me, especially in a time of absolute need, and that goes for all relationships in your life. So it's definitely important. These digital spaces are definitely important as we adapt to them and the people that are running them, because connecting more on a human to human level right now is the most important thing.
That human to human connection. Thank you so much, Chase, and all of our panelists for your honesty and your candid responses and thoughts on such an important topic, the mental health and well-being of our communities during this time and always. And I'd love to, before we head into our Q&A, I'd love to hear from a few other panelists on specific resources that they would recommend and why they're recommending them. And Allison, Elijah, Lisa, and Dr. Sadler, and of course, Chase and Dr. Aiva, if you'd like to add in your resources, please let us know. For example, I'd recommend for folks to start a conversation. And I know that it's not always easy to start this conversation, but you can find some helpful guidelines on seizetheawkward.org, and it can help you become better equipped to talking about mental health with a peer or a parent, or in my case, my siblings, who, although are thousands of miles away from me right now are still very much concerned about the same issues that we've been talking about on this panel today. And I want to know how I can help them. And so that website's really helpful to me, and I'm interested in hearing from our panelists as well.
So there's two things I can just suggest that you can do virtually. You can, you have this tool where you can have therapy assistance online, which is called TAL. It's through Rowan University. And also you can visit this app. It's called Better You, which can help manage stress and help meet your personal goals. And just to alleviate like what you have going on in your personal life.
One resource that's been helpful to me, especially if you're facing kind of like the loss of having a club or organization to go to, is an app called Discord. It's completely free, and you can find a wide variety of different communities, whether it's a particular movie, music genre, video game that you're interested in, and you can meet people to talk to about those topics, or even just meet and be able to play games with them or watch the movies together.
I have a couple. So like BetterHelp is an app for online therapy. It matches you with a therapist through a little questionnaire that it does. So it kind of connects you with someone that it thinks would meet your needs. And they do have free trials, and then they also have affordable payment plans once the trial is over. If you are already in therapy and you haven't been able to see them, I would say reach out, ask if they're able to do video sessions. That's what me and my therapist have been doing with the app called Blue Jeans, but there's obviously Zoom and a couple of others. And then if therapy is not for you, or just obviously not in the budget, because we are in some weird times right now where people are out of work, I'd say don't sleep on like Facebook groups, like closed Facebook groups. There's so many out there with so many safe spaces and communities. I'm a part of a few groups, like one for eating disorder recovery, one for general mental health. There's a few that I'm in, but there's so many out there. And then just like there's YouTubers like Katie Morton. I've subscribed to her. She's a licensed clinician, and she's really helpful. She's got a video on just about every single topic. So those are some things I would suggest.
Yeah, so some of the resources I would recommend, again, making sure that we keep at the forefront of our minds that every person has been socialized differently. So not everyone will have the same help-seeking behaviors and attitudes. So whether it's your priest, whether it's your pastor or imam, so that most certainly can be a resource for some students. Most certainly your college counseling center. As the one student had already made mention, if you already are receiving individual counseling, make sure that you continue to maintain that connection with your therapist. There is a resource that we at the Wellness Center have been promoting at Rowan University for our students, and that's Therapy Assistance Online. The acronym is TAL. So that is an opportunity where students can just have therapy assistance online. They don't have to go in to an office to meet with a clinician. There are activities, there are meditations that are offered for students. Of course, if you are in crisis, you most certainly will want to visit your local emergency room and dial 911. There's also a crisis text line, again, making sure that we do our very best to be culturally sensitive and responsive, where students can text the word SMART to 741. Again, that's SMART. And they can just simply text what their concern is, and a crisis counselor will respond to them. To our students who identify as a student of color, they can text the word Steve, STEVE, to the same number, 741-741. And again, they'll be connected to a crisis counselor who specializes in working with students of color. And there is a lifeline, and this information is from JED, which JED Foundation is a nonprofit organization that works very closely with adolescents as well as college students. So they have a lifeline, and I do believe at the end of this presentation, there'll be additional resources, and I'm under the impression that Lifeline will be listed, but that's 1-800-273-TALK. And again, this is an opportunity where you'll be able to speak to someone directly should you need additional support during this time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sala. That's an amazing list of resources, and we're excited to share them with everyone who's attending. Dr. Aiva and Chase, are there any additional resources you'd like to add before we close off today?
I would just like to add, because, you know, mental health is an issue that's affecting pretty much everyone. And there are also a lot of minors as far as younger children. And so there are two really instrumental aspects to this. One is the Crisis Management Institute is really offering a lot, and you can Google them. They're offering a lot of services and webinars for parents and caregivers, as well as what to do with children. And then I would also add, if you actually Google in mental health webinar, you would be surprised about how many are coming up in the chat. And so it's not something you have to really dig and find right now. It's really in a very open space. And I suggest you go to them, whether they take place in a religious affiliation or whether they take place, in an educational setting. It's really, they're really educating everyone. And it's really kind of been a support for you and for the people who you might be in shelter in place with. And so I would really recommend Googling mental health webinars, and there's tons available as well.
Thank you.
I would definitely recommend using Reddit. I love reddit.com. I don't know how I got onto it, but you can literally find anything on there. You know, I know it's not face to face, but you can kind of find comfort in knowing that people are going through the same things as you. I know when I'm going through a lot of things, I usually look it up on Reddit, and somehow somebody's going through the same thing as me. So I definitely recommend that. To all the freshmen on here, I'm sorry that your freshman year of college kind of went this way, but I would definitely, like, speaking from a resident assistant point of view, talk to your RA. Where, we want to be here for you. Like, we want to ensure that you guys, foster the academic, personal, social development that you may experience, and we just definitely reach out to us. To other students, I would definitely just recommend talking to a trusted adult, whether that be your parents, a professor, somebody else that I know one of my professors, I talk to him all the time. I was telling him about some of the problems I've been facing during this pandemic, and he really, got me down to a calm level. So that just having that resource there is always good. But definitely those three.
Thank you all. We've got some really great Q&A questions coming up, some of which include shout outs to our panelists and just general love for everyone on the panel right now. And so I'd like to take this time to thank Rowan University, NIRSA, and Give Something Back Foundation for hosting this virtual conversation, and our panelists for your honesty, your valuable work in the mental health space, and for helping to lead this conversation on mental health and kindness and that intersection. And just before we open up to Q&A, I'd like for everyone, those of us on the panel and everyone listening, to take a moment to reflect on the many ways that we can help lead conversations like these in our own lives. And whether it is in your home, your friend group, your workplace, or in the privacy of your home when you're journaling. Start with asking, what does mental health mean to you? And remember to take the time to think of what you can control and how you can help others, and share the many resources that are available during this time and always. And so with that, I'll jump into the Q&A, and I'll just read a few that we have here. So Kevin asks, How do you work with parents or siblings that are not taking care of themselves? Maybe they're plummeting due to a financial distress or are impacted by someone that has COVID-19. Dr. Aiva, do you have thoughts to share on that question?
Yeah. I mean, that is a tough one, right? There is what I would call a lot of role reversal happening right now. We have a lot of students who actually are essential care workers and their parents might be unemployed. And so it looks different in different places and in spaces. There is not an easy answer or right answer, right? That dialogue in that space and knowing. And sometimes it's a delicate balance of, do I need to push? Or should I push, or should I wait this out? And if we're all thinking about this from a grief and loss perspective, there is a timing, right? That people go through the different stages of grief and loss very differently. And so it's okay that it looks not so great for a moment and to allow people that vulnerability and that space. But there is also a time where you would want to intervene. And part of that space is asking to do things consistently, opening that door. But if you believe you're in a situation where it's not necessarily going to get better because either your parent or sibling is not getting better, then you should reach out for support and assistance. And I would go to the person you trust the most first. And if you have access to somewhere like a university that has access to mental health, I would start there as well.
Thank you. Amber asks, or excuse me, we have another question. How will you be different after this pandemic in supporting your well-being as well as not taking things for granted? I'd love to invite Elijah to share his thoughts on this question, specifically answering how you plan to be different and focus on your well-being after this pandemic.
So things that I'm planning to do after the pandemic is sticking to the hobbies that I picked up and also take care of myself and the people around me. I plan on conquering the small goals that I set for myself during the day, so that way it can be room for bigger goals in the future. I also plan to just start using a planner more, because it's very important using a planner, and it plans out your day to see what can you do, and also making sure that I can get other people on board to go in the same rotation that I'm doing.
That's incredibly important. I think scheduling our time and recognizing that this time we can use for self-care, or this can be dedicated to complete our schoolwork and so on, is really important. One of my colleagues at Born This Way Foundation, she actually schedules her time for stress, essentially. She says, for 20 minutes a day, this is when I am going to allow myself to worry. And it's not that these thoughts aren't invited at different times in the day, but that it's okay to as Dr. Aiva said, and as our co-founder Lady Gaga also says, it's okay to not be okay, but to find tiny ways that we can approach mental wellness and support one another is incredibly important. And so we have some time for just a few, maybe two more questions before we close off the program for today. The first we'll start with is Allie. How do you want to be helped and supported by your university, both for students and staff? And so I'd love for Chase to help answer this question, since he is both a student and a staff at a school.
How do I want to be supported? I'm definitely big on positive reinforcement. So kind of tracking back to what I said before, if you really knew me, I'm big on empathy. I'm big on, treating others with kindness, because that's the way we want to be treated, obviously. So I just want to be supported by, if I have an assignment due and God forbid something happened where I can't finish the assignment, and I go to my professor saying, explain the situation, but they come to me saying, well, that's tough luck, that's life, get it done. I'm not going to respond well to that. I'm big on seeing the bigger picture. Obviously, this is out of my control. I can't finish the assignment. I'm not going to, drag myself through the mud to get it done. when I have other things, when I have bigger things to worry about, you know? So just being understanding, having that open ear, being there for me, essentially, as basic as it sounds. I just want the university to see me more as, I want to feel valued, you know, as a student and a member of the campus community, both by, you know, my peers and staff. So
thank you so much for that response, Chase. And to help close us off, I'd love for Dr. Sadler to give her brief thoughts on helping to reinforce the resources and the connections that students with hidden disabilities have for classroom accommodations in college. So I know you listed quite a few resources for young people and students alike. And John asks if you and Dr. Aiva can reinforce that students with hidden disabilities are eligible for classroom accommodations in college. I would just love to touch on that before we close.
Sure. And Dr. Aiva, please jump in. Yes, definitely our students who have, you know, disabilities, I think this goes back to that vulnerability and that fear of shame, that now is the time, if one has accommodations, to throw themselves, you know, in a very just that vulnerable situation to get the help that they need. Because I think at this particular time, our administrators, our professional staff, as well as faculty are sensitive to the needs of our students. And even if the student is less inclined to make known their accommodations, I would most certainly encourage for them to seek out support from their office. Our office is the Academic Success Center. So again, even if they wanted to reach out for tutoring, their academic advisor, just other ways in which they will want support that may feel less threatening to them. But again, I think at this point, as we're talking about kindness in the process, making sure that we do our very best to be kind to ourselves and recognize, you know, the importance of all of us being in this together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sadler. And I know that we're all very eager to continue this conversation, but we are cut a bit short for time now. And I just want to conclude by saying thank you again to all of those who joined our panel, to everyone who is participating in this conversation through the chat box and the Q&A. Thank you. And we look forward to having more conversations on what mental health means to you.